Hey, Sens fans, we are live here from the Senstennial podcast. This is your host, Matt. Both Bennett and other Matt had some plans, and that's totally okay. So I'm doing this solo and here to discuss the biggest news of the Sens, and that would be the firing of head coach, or should I say former head coach, DJ Smith. So that's some big news. So I want to talk about that. If you're in chat, I want to get your feedback, any of your thoughts, any questions you might have about what the Sens do going forward, whether it's personnel, whether it's coaching decisions, whatever it may be. Just yeah, getting your thoughts on that, and where did the Sens go from here? And that's kind of the main purpose of the stream today and what we're going to be doing. Now, I've also got the coaching record up for DJ Smith. It is not pretty, as you could all imagine. So, right now, as it stands, DJ Smith coached just under 5 years with the Ottawa Senators. And in that span, he coached 317 games, and he ended up with a record, all with Ottawa, of 131 wins, 154 losses, and 32 overtime or shootout losses. So he finishes his career in Ottawa with a winning percentage of a meager .464. That is really not great. Obviously, they were rebuilding for a couple years in that time span, but even in the last couple years, they finished sixth in their division and are currently eighth in their division. So I'll throw that up on screen here just so you all can see it. Looking not so great here is the coaching record. DJ Smith out in Ottawa, and Ottawa Senators announced that bright and early today. I had it up here, and then I took it down because that's what we do. Here we go. So, yeah, Sens announced it earlier today. DJ Smith gone. Also, Davis Payne, one of the assistant coach responsible for the power play. He was also relieved of his duties in the same firing. In comes Jacques Martin as the interim head coach. Daniel Alfredson steps behind the bench as the assistant coach, which he did in the two games that the Sens played in Stockholm, Sweden. So it'll be interesting to see how Daniel Alfredson's role with the Sens, now his new role, impacts the team going forward. And, it was mentioned that Daniel Alfredson will be working with the Sens on their power play, which is huge. Last year, the special teams actually didn't look too bad under DJ Smith, but obviously, as we all know, this season the special teams absolutely floundered. The penalty kill wasn't looking good until the game against Vegas. Ottawa's power play wasn't looking good. So here's hoping that Daniel Alfredson can bring some of that magic that he had when he was on the Sens and played on the power play, and Jacques Martin can work some of that defensive zone magic. And his teams also had really good offensive results. So having Jacques Martin refine the offensive and defensive systems of the Ottawa Senators will be good to see. Now, obviously, can't expect immediate results, but I think any progress is good progress at this point, and we'll see what he can do. If you're just joining chat, I'm looking to take your thoughts, any questions you have about the Sens going forward. What do you think about DJ Smith being fired? Do you think the season is salvageable, even if it's a marginal chance the Sens make the playoffs, or are you looking at that the top prospects of the 2024 draft and seeing who Ottawa should pursue? So, whether optimistic, pessimistic, cynical, whatever your thoughts are, please share them. Happy to discuss with you over the next hour or so. Going to be probably doing this live stream until about 9 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, thanks for joining in today. One of the biggest questions that I think people have been floating around is whether the defensive systems are just that bad or whether goaltending is also part of this. And personally, I'm quite biased. I really like Jonas Korpisalo. I think some people believe that his contract is a major regret that, is another, what do you call that? A problem that Pierre Dorion passed to new ownership and management. But I don't see it as quite the case. I think if you compare his technique and how he makes his saves compared to former goalies like Matt Murray, of course, Korpisalo has the technique. He's usually in position to make saves. When he does let some weak ones in, I find it's already when the game is lost. And that's just kind of how she goes sometimes. I personally think you put a competent defense in front of these goaltenders and you start teaching them how to have an active stick, better control, you're going to see better results. So Kevin, popping in. Thanks for joining, Kevin. This move had to be done at some point, but I'm wishing the best for DJ and Davis and their families. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know some people said that it was absolutely savage that they were let go prior to the holidays. Um, True. That said, they do get that nice severance pay, and their contracts still have to be paid out, even if they're fired. So they'll still get some money. I'm sure they'll be able to find some work. If not in the NHL, then definitely AHL or junior. I'm sure a lot of teams will be interested, especially in DJ Smith. I know that's kind of hard to fathom, but I think as a junior coach, he would really be a guy that a lot of teams would reach out to and be interested in hiring for their programs. But I think when it comes to an NHL gig, it may take maybe a little longer for him to get a role. Kind of like Patrick Waugh. I think he's going to be due for an NHL opportunity soon. One of those guys where things didn't work out in Colorado. He goes back to the QMJHL, has some success there. And now NHL teams might come calling for him come the summer and look to bring him on the payroll. So yeah, I agree, Kevin. Like you got to think of the people as well and their families. They're not just robots with no emotions. But at the same time, I think it's good for the Ottawa Senators to move on here, and that's what they do. So um, yeah, I mean, aside from that, Jacques Martin, actually, I forgot to bring up his coaching record. Jacques Martin, long career, was most recently with the Pittsburgh Penguins as a coach. And he saw success with them. They obviously won back to back Stanley Cups. As you can see, he spent a long time in Ottawa from the 95-96 season all the way through to the 03-04 season where he was eventually fired and went on to coach the Florida Panthers. Didn't see a ton of success in his first few seasons with them, but then saw the, or sorry, no, and then he went to Montreal, saw some success with the Habs, and then he went on to be an assistant coach with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like I said, won back-to-back cups, and yeah, so he brings that experience with him. And who knows, maybe if the Pittsburgh Penguins go out and fire Mike Sullivan, the Sens bring Mike Sullivan in and move Jacques Martin back to that assistant coach role. We'll have to see, but you look at Jacques Martin's record, it's quite a bit better. Even in his 9 years when he was with the Sens, he had a winning percentage of .577. That is far and above what we saw here with DJ Smith at .464. And aside from that, he had a rebuilding team for what first few years. Jacques Martin, both of them had a rebuilding team. And Jacques Martin said the Ottawa Senators are in a better position that they were now than they were back when he first started coaching them. So, it only took him a couple of years to turn the program around and get them into the playoffs. So, let's see. Let's see what he can do here. Let's see what kind of magic he can muster. But, yeah, Kevin or anyone else who's in chat, thank you for joining. Feel free to drop your comments, your thoughts on DJ Smith being let go, Davis Payne being let go, and of course, Jacques Martin, Daniel Alfredson joined the squad. And maybe any thoughts on moves that you think the Sens should or shouldn't make going forward, whether it's just transactions internally like call-ups or sending people down, whether it's scratches, what you would do to improve the roster within reason, of course. We're not, going out and getting McDavid, but, there's some names that have been out there. So anything you think would be reasonable to bring into the fold. We're going to just discuss stuff about the Ottawa Senators for, the next hour or so. Happy to take any comments or questions in chat here. As I sip on my Bailey's, mixed it with some chocolate milk. I just am going to say this combination is goated. Kevin, this one goes out to you. I know you're a man of chocolate milk. Mixed with Bailey's, it's a fine drink. Smooth, baby. Oh, man. And the other thing is, I don't know how many people realize this. Jacques Martin's first home game with the Sens, like now this season, will be against his former squad, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, what would you think if Ottawa plays Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh loses, and let's just say they fire Mike Sullivan? Likely won't happen, but let's just say, okay? And then Mike Sullivan reunited with Jacques Martin in Ottawa. You never know. Kevin asks, "Are you surprised that Jack Capuano wasn't let go?" I actually am. I'm kind of more surprised that Davis Payne was let go. Not that I think he should have stayed on. I kind of thought that the entire coaching staff would be wiped clean, but I think primarily, and we discussed this in the podcast episode we recorded today, which will come out tomorrow on YouTube and Spotify and all that good stuff. But we discussed this, and Ottawa doesn't have anyone kind of waiting in the wings to be a D coach right now. Interestingly enough, when Capuano was with the Islanders and the Florida Panthers, his teams, like their defensive cores, had some of their most productive seasons while he was defensive coach. So it's interesting that he hasn't seen that same sort of success here. It could be because of personnel. Ottawa hasn't always had the best defenseman on the roster. But yeah, a little surprised. Like if you're firing the head coach and an assistant coach, it's interesting to keep the one coach who was trying to interview. I don't know how many people remember this. It was like a couple seasons ago. Jack Capuano wanted to interview for that Buffalo Sabres job, and the Ottawa Senators didn't let him. And now, when it comes to firing the coaching staff, Jack Capuano is the only one who survives the purge. So interesting turn of events, but um, I think he's going to be let go. I think it's a matter of time. I think once Ottawa determines who their head coach is, whether it's Jacques Martin who ends up getting the long term gig, which who knows, because right now he's the oldest coach in the league at 71, or whether they turn to somebody, whether it's fresh blood, whether it's, I don't know, up and comer. We'll see what happens, but um, I could see it in the future having a guy come in, like an established head coach who maybe has more longevity in the NHL, and then having Jacques Martin slide in as the associate coach and Alfie as assistant. That to me would make some sense. And then I think the goalie coach, they need to swap the goalie coach out as well, but we'll have to see. At the end of the day, it's interesting they gave Capuano a choice whether he would maintain his role or kind of look for a new position elsewhere, but um, I think he'd be able to find another gig in the NHL. I don't know how long it'll take, but guess we'll see. Thanks for the question there, Kevin. All right, David Joseph. The move had to be made from both sides. The team was regressing. DJ was clearly at his wits' end and had no idea to turn things around. Yeah, and I think Steos kind of mentioned in his presser today that DJ Smith's message wasn't getting through to the players anymore. And I mean, we can all read between the lines or try to find meaning, whether it's there or not, of his words. Um, Whether the players stopped getting his message or whether they just weren't applying what he was telling them in the best way, and so they were not improving. I'm not entirely sure what Steos exactly meant by that. But at the end of the day, you're right. You look at Sanderson, I think at the beginning of the season, he looked like a world beater. And I think now he's kind of regressed to a point where he looks good, but he's not the Jake Sanderson that I think Sens fans saw at the beginning of the season. And that's a little frustrating. You look at guys like Tim Stützle, and I know Tim Stützle is above point per game. He's putting up points, but he just doesn't seem like the same game breaker. We saw during the game against Vegas, Stützle did have that really nifty goal, or sorry, not goal, chance where he, deked the defender out a couple times through the legs with the puck and got a little shot away. But Stützle doesn't do that as often as he used to, and I'm not sure why that is. You have, Josh Norris, who he's doing fine, and obviously part of his lack of statistical performance is just him coming back from injury and needing to get going again and get his feet under him, and I think he's looked fine. But aside from that, like who can you say is a standout? Like Mathieu Joseph has had a great season before he got injured, but like Claude Giroux's been good. Like he's kind of trending the same way as last season, which was great. But he's not maybe as potent on the power play as he was last year, and I think that's kind of like most guys on the team. Aside from him, Chikrin, again, his defensive game has diminished, and he was a stud on Arizona, and he could play both ends of the ice and put up good results. He's still got a lot of points this season, which is great. The offensive side of him is evidently still there. The problem is, where's that defensive game at? And is this an accurate representation of what he can bring defensively? And that's, I think, where you need a new coach to really kind of suss that out and see what Jacob Chikrin truly is there. Is it just the guy who puts up points but isn't the best at defending? Or is there a better defender there that kind of just needs some coaching, some details of his game ironed out? Jacob Bernard Dockers looked decent. I've liked his game recently. I think that he should have Travis Hamonick's spot when Brandstrom comes back from injury. Um, but overall, like, I don't know. You just don't see a lot of guys taking that step forward. Even Brady Tkachuk, he's not playing as well as he was last season. He's got a decent number of goals, but I'm not seeing the same drive from the players, and it's really frustrating. And that could just be recency bias. But last year, when they missed the playoffs, they were 6 points out, but they had a lot of injuries. So I could forgive it last year because their special teams were good. Their injuries seemed to just be never ending. And I was like, 6 points of a spot with the results they had, seven different goalies playing. I could forgive it. But this year, you've had a mostly healthy roster. I know Shane Pinto hasn't been on the roster, but mostly healthy roster. And you have much better depth than you've had in the past, better blue line than you've had in the past, better goaltending tandem. I think Korpisalo and Forsberg are a good tandem. I know the results this year haven't been great, but I think you just give them some time, you give them a better defense, and things will start to sharpen up there. And still, not the best results, and so I think that's what's frustrating to see. And anyway, all this ramble to say, you're right, David. Like you can tell that the regression is there, and they're just not performing how they should be performing with the personnel that they have. I think after 20, 30 games under Martin, we'll know which players are the real deal and which ones are overrated. And that's possible too. 20, 30 games, I think, is a fair mark. I think some people will want results instantly, and I don't think that that's a fair expectation. Hypothetically, even if the Sens win like the next 3 games, you could probably chalk that up to that coach bump, new coach bump, especially because Jacques Martin is a very well respected coach in the league. But after that, once it gets that 20, 30 game mark, that initial new coach hype or burst of energy, momentum, motivation, what have you, that's gonna start to fade away. And we're gonna start to see what this team has. And you're totally right, Dave. You're on the money here, in my opinion. You know, at that 20, 30 game mark, which players are the ones performing? Which players are still not cutting it? And is a guy like Kubalik going to get a bump from a new coach, or is Kubalik who Kubalik is this season? Is he just a guy who kind of is invisible, gets a goal here and there, but doesn't ever stand out? And so these are the things that they're going to need to figure out, and especially it's it seems far away now, but the trade deadline's in two just over 2 months. Ottawa's going to need to make decisions on some players. Tarasenko is a free agent this summer. If Tarasenko decides I'd like to go to a contender, then Ottawa's unlikely to bring a guy like him back into the fold next season. And for all the talk of Tarasenko, I think he's had a good season so far, all things considered. Especially the amount of times he's had to play with like Chartier and Kubalik. He really hasn't had those offensive players to play with, and I think he's still done a good job. Especially losing Ridley Gregg when those two had such good chemistry. So yeah, I think they need to start figuring things out. Even if they don't make the playoffs this year, because I know the chances are very slim, they need to show fans and they need to show themselves that they can get to that point. And last year when everyone at the Sens versus Columbus game was chanting, "We want playoffs," I think the team really was trending that way. And then they had that one bad road trip, and it threw their whole season off. And you can't have that. You need to have a team that consistently can come out, perform, and beat those weaker teams that they need to take care of in order to just get easy points in the standings. Like the Columbus game a couple of weeks ago. All you need to do, you need to just beat a weak team and move yourself 2 points higher in the standings. And they couldn't do that. They go up 2 goals and they just shit the bed, for lack of a better phrase. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on that. Kevin, I think that Jacques will not be afraid to keep players accountable. Steos mentioned the word discipline earlier as well. Yeah, and that's a guy like Jacques Martin. Sorry, Justin here. Jacques Martin, he's been around the league for a long time. Like I said earlier, he's the oldest coach in the league now at 71. Man has seen some shit. And he's also, coached, like I also mentioned earlier, he was an assistant coach for the 2016-2017 Pittsburgh Penguins team that won the cup. So when you have a guy like that who has the winning pedigree to come in and uh, and to set things straight, I think another thing that Steos mentioned was attention to detail, and I think you're going to need the discipline, the attention to detail, just a better defensive game all around, not just defensively, forwards as well. Everyone needs to get involved and chip in. The Great Canadian Tire Fire Center. How are you doing? Christmas came a week early. Decision was long overdue. It's on players to be accountable, and Martin won't tolerate bad turnovers in him. Yeah, and that's the other thing. When watching that Vegas game, holy crap, it was frustrating. And it just wasn't. It wasn't just the bad turnovers. It was the bad defensive lapses that they had that led to odd man chances and breakaways throughout the game. And I rarely will turn off a Sens game. I turned it off after the second period. I couldn't do it. It was so disheartening. And as someone who's like usually very optimistic and positive about the team, it was too hard to watch. But I counted at least three, potentially four breakaways that Vegas had in the first two periods, two of which ended up in the back of the net. One, Forsberg stopped. And then they had that odd man rush right at the beginning of the game, that again, cough up the puck, turns back the other way. Eichel goes in, scores a nice shorthanded goal. Um, it's stuff like that needs to be cleaned up. And so hopefully Martin comes in and he gets them to start paying attention to the details of their game because they really, really need to clean up their act. David, only three untouchables, Kachuk, Stützle, Sanderson. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I think there's definitely a lot of guys that you could probably move to shake up the roster. Um, I think I'd agree with you. I think those are the three untouchables. After that, it gets to me. It's just kind of a matter of what are you trying to do with the team, like where are you trying to go. For me, Jacob Chikrin, I personally would think of as an untouchable, just because I think he's just got so much to his game, and to bring in a guy who's like a Norris caliber defenseman in Arizona, while he was healthy, I'll add that caveat, and then only keep him for 2 3 seasons and trade him away. I think would be frustrating. Um, yeah. So but like, there's other players too, like Drake Batherson, for example. I think he's really, turned a corner and he's been a lot better offensively this season. It seems like he's really come back from his injury now this season. Last season, it's looked like he was still recovering and wasn't quite ready. And this season, he's looked better. He's taken a step to returning to form that he was at before his major injury. So there's some players on the team who, you look at and you're like, okay, for especially Batherson's contract, he's a really good value contract. So guys like that, it's not untouchable because of um like them being world beaters. It's more of like for the value you're getting from that player for the amount of points they give you. Do you want to give up a contract like that? So there's things like that I would take into consideration. But ultimately, I agree with you. If you're coming down to like three totally untouchable players, like Kachuk, Stützle, Sanderson, for sure. Oh, after the ranting and raving there, I'm gonna have another sip of my Bailey's and chocolate milk, baby. Ah, it's a good holiday drink, very festivus, nice and smooth. Oh man. I mean, that's what it's been about lately with the Ottawa Senators, taking drinks here and there and whatever to dull the pain. Um, oh man, I was gonna pull up Hockey Viz, so I don't know if any of you have a subscription to Hockey Viz, but they have some really sweet metrics here that you can take a look at. And one of the ones that I think is definitely one that needs to be cleaned up is Ottawa's PK defense. So you know, this season it actually technically has been better than last season, but it's still below league average. Essentially, the plus percentage is if zero is league average, a plus on the penalty kill means you're under league average, and a minus means you're above league average. So the Sens are slightly under league average here. You can see they allow a lot of shots. I'll zoom in a little here. Um, you can see they take a lot of shots from that right circle. Um, so cleaning that up, I think, will be a big thing for Jacques Martin. Um, the PK defense or offense, sorry, I believe is a lot less potent. Yeah, so last season you could see the Ottawa Senators really got a lot of offense from in front of the net, also from Josh Norris's office, basically. But this season, their power play has dried up. You're still getting a lot of goals from Josh Norris's office now that he's back and large in charge. You're getting some offense generated from the point, usually from Sanderson, Chikrin. Side of the net, there's some, but look at like in front of the net, they're getting nothing. And last season, that was the hallmark of their power play: get in front of the net, get those greasy goals. And this season, they're not getting that whatsoever. It's just a black hole in the middle of the ice. So hopefully, Alfie can get to work on that power play, help them sort out some of that stuff there, and yeah, we'll see what can be done. Um, so I think Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredson have a lot of work ahead of them, but solid tandem. They were together back in the early days when Jacques Martin was coach. It seemed like Daniel Alfredson, according to Steos, had a lot of love for the guy, a lot of respect, and I think them as a tandem will be good. Apparently, when the players were overseas in Stockholm, having Daniel Alfredson behind the bench was huge for them. Whether it was working with them on the ice and in practice, he was. So I actually was fortunate enough to be able to go, and you could see when Daniel Alfredson was on the ice, he like commanded a lot of respect from players, and he wasn't even super vocal. He would just go up to some guys, have some one-on-one conversations with them, show a few things with the puck. Man still has silky hands. Lace the skates up for Daniel. Put him on the power play. I want to see this guy, see what he can do. Help this team out, because he still got it. Legs may not be the same as 10 years ago, but man, guy still has the silky mitts and the nice shot. So, yeah, all that to say, it'll be interesting to see what changes they make. Obviously, it's probably not going to be huge changes on day one. I think we're going to, I believe David was saying it earlier, like 20, 30 games is like when you'll know, kind of have like a really good idea. But I think when it comes to systems, hopefully, less than 20 games, you'll start to see those new systems really take shape. What I do find interesting too is Jacques Martin has that interim tag. So I'm very curious to see if the Sens keep him as an interim coach and in the offseason decide to look for someone else to replace him and move him back to a senior advising role, or if they really hope that he either, I don't know, stays behind the bench in an associate role, or maybe he goes to the front office and he works as a scout or some other front office role. It'll be interesting to see that. And Steos also mentioned for Daniel Alfredson, whether he was in a coaching role or a front office role, he thought it was a good fit for Daniel Alfredson. So taking those things into account, we'll see. But the one downside to Daniel Alfredson being coach is like you can never fire that dude. You fans will be so irate if you ever fire Daniel Alfredson. So their only thing they can do is promote him to like a front office role if things start to get dicey. But I'm sure that's all well and good. David, Alfie brings instant credibility and will teach them how to be good pros, good work ethic. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, like seeing them practice in Stockholm, you could see he was going up to individual players and he was just giving them some guidance. I obviously I don't know what exactly he said. It's a little too far away for that, but just being able to watch the open practice that they did in Stockholm and see how he interacted with players and stuff, you could see that they had a lot of respect for him, a lot of time of day for what he was telling them. So yeah, I don't know. I couldn't be happier about this tandem. I think it's also two really well respected guys in the game. You know, I've seen other fan bases having a laugh at Jacques Martin being hired or Daniel Alfredson being hired, and like, man, Don't even care. I don't think they realize what kind of upgrade this is for the team. We haven't had like a solid NHL coach in quite some time. You could argue that Guy Boucher was good, but he has a short shelf life. You know, you get one good season out of him, and then the system starts to fall apart and it's all over. Which is probably why the Leafs brought him in. They're like, hey, man, get us a couple rounds, please, baby. And then we'll let you go back to RDS to do your analyst stuff. Might be Alfie might be our version of Rod Brindamore lifetime contract. Damn. All right, it's day one, Kevin, but I love the optimism and enthusiasm here. That's a big show of support. But yeah, you know what? When it comes to Alfie, whether it's coaching, whether it's front office, like he does need to stay with the team. And I'd like to see there's like a couple other alumni that are, you know, in the league still. One potentially on the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are really renowned for their scouting and wanting to be in a front office role. And like down the road, I know Dubas and Spezza are like friggin' best buds. You know, they go everywhere together. But if Spezza ever splits from his best pal, it would be nice to see him brought back into the organization in some sort of scouting role or front office position because Jason Spezza is one of those guys who's always talked about as being really knowledgeable about hockey and not just, you know, being a good player. He was just had an eye for the game and a talent for evaluation and stuff. So I'd really like to see him back in the org in some sort of way in the future. But yeah, you have to bring in the right alumni, right? You can't just bring in every guy just for the nostalgia. But yeah, I think it's a good step for the franchise, and hopefully Alfie stays with the Sens for quite some time. Just gonna grab a drink and then Great Canadian Tire Fire Center. I'll get to your comment. All right. When Carolina hired Rod the Body at the 200-foot game mastered, Alfie brings a similar degree of experience. Yeah, Alfie actually. I'll see if I can bring that up. Um, don't know if HockeyViz has his old analytics. Um, yeah, Daniel Alfredson, what a with the goat. It's kind of crazy if you look at it. So like SG is kind of uh Hockey Viz's thing for like where a player ranks. So even at 35, 36, he's playing at like all-star level. And even when he was 37, 38, he dropped to like being second line level. And at ages of 39 through 41, he was essentially a low first line or a high second line player. Alvy was a friggin' beast. And so um, you know, when you look at a player like that, yeah, he has a lot of accolades when it comes to obviously being a Hall of Famer, but you know, won a Calder Trophy. I know he didn't win a lot of personal awards outside of that, but I mean, he's one of the best Swedish players of all time. So I think that the experience that he provides and the respect that he commands from players is huge. Imagine having the pizza line all back together in Sens front office. Heater's a scout. Is Danny Heatley a scout with the no? Hold up. Hold up. You're lying to me. Danny Heatley, NHL scout. Let me see. No friggin' way. Don't lie to me right now. Holy crap, he is. What? Okay, so Danny Heatley's in the front office of the Philadelphia Flyers. Jesus. That's nuts. Okay, well, interesting. Yeah, I guess bring him in, baby. We'll get the pizza line of scouting. Oh man, that's something else. Yeah, get Radek Bonk in here too for the flow. Who else can we get? Volchenkov, you know, teach the boys how to lay down a good block shot, a good, you know, fierce effort. Get Vermette for the penalty killing. Who else can we get? Alfie's mullet. Hey, hey. Oh man. Anyway, yeah, so good God, got me off track now. Friggin' Danny Heatley. I wonder if he's a pro or amateur scout with the Flyers. That's really interesting. Ah, another sip of the Bailey's chocolate milk combo. Y'all love that stuff. Um, Thanks to everyone who's joined so far, who's watching, listening to me ramble. Um, we just recorded, me and the other guys just recorded a podcast episode we're releasing tomorrow. So, um, shameless plug here. If you're interested, just you know, please come back for more. Drop us a sub, we'd appreciate it. I know we're not as big as some of the other big Sens podcasts or content creators out there, but we put a lot of work into this, and we have a really cool deal that we have coming up with an outdoor hockey company, but I'll keep that under the wraps until it's official. But something cool coming up that this is first revealed tonight, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, just don't bring Dag into coach. Yeah, something tells me that he's not going to get a coaching gig with the Ottawa Senators, but who knows? I guess anything's possible in the Anlauer nostalgia era. And I think what's important to note actually is when Anlauer he was with the Habs, right? And he was a big Habs fan. They love their nostalgia, love it. They still bring in PK Subban, and I know Carey Price is still with the team, even though he's on been on LTIR for a while. But they still bring those guys in whenever they can to get the crowd fired up and all that stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, I mean, Anlauer's already kind of brought like all the nostalgia pieces back, right? From Lyndon Slewage doing the anthem, from Cyril Leader coming in as CEO, Jacques Martin, Daniel Alfredson. I know Phillips and Neal were already with the organization, but making those guys prominent public community figures, I think they're doing quite a bit to hit the old nostalgia um, button. Would like to see you guys drop more content if possible too. Since no data. Yeah, and that's totally fair, David. I appreciate the comment there. All three of us work full-time jobs during the day, and Bennett and his wife welcomed a little guy into the world a few months ago. So um, we recognize that we could definitely fill some of those voids and do more content. We've talked about it before. Other troubles is like you know near the end of November I was out of town for a couple weeks for work, so that really put a wrench in the gear, so to speak, of the podcast. But I already have been talking to a couple guys, guests to come onto the show in the new year. We'll probably release, so we have a new podcast episode coming up tomorrow. We're probably going to record something else, like a shorter episode for like Friday going into the like holiday break. Then we'll take like a week or two off for the holidays, and then we'll come back in the new year. Like I said, got hopefully a new uh, brand deal coming for the podcast because we're no longer affiliated with the Hockey Podcast Network. Um, we just made an executive decision to leave the network and kind of do our own thing. Um, and yeah, new guests coming in the new year. So looking forward to that. What is your power rankings for GM head coach? Oh man, GM is tough because I'm thinking like you look around the league and essentially there's like it's hard to find either previous GMs who are good because they're already snatched up by other teams or new GMs who you might not know what you're going to get out of them. Like Steve Stais had a high reputation, but like he didn't have a lot of former experience, right? And Ryan Bonus is the same way. A lot of experience in a scouting role, but never as a like an executive. So for GM, I'm not sure. I just please don't give me like Bergevin or something like that. Like, please, no, don't recycle him, please. But maybe some new blood. Um, whether that's coming out of junior, whether that's an assistant GM elsewhere in the league who has a good rapport with Anlauer or Steos, or just has he's well viewed by his colleagues and stuff like that, and has a good track record. Um, we will see. There's definitely some candidates out there. So yeah, but coaches. So obviously I have no issues with Jacques Martin. But if I were to look at head coaches, I think it really depends on what happens in Pittsburgh. If Mike Sullivan is fired from that gig, even though I know Dubas right now has his back, Mike Sullivan is a coach who really intrigues me. Aside from him, I like Claude Julien. I know a lot of people are gonna rag on that, but Claude Julien, if you look at his track record, his teams had really good possession numbers. And in this age of the NHL, especially, if you're possessing the puck, the other team isn't. Whoa, blows my mind. I know. So if you get a coach who comes in and you can help your team have high possession, keep the puck hemmed in the offensive zone, get your defenseman active because that was another thing Claude Julien had with his teams, active defensemen. He never had any elite scorers on his teams, really. He had Bergeron, he had Marchand. Lucic was good for a couple seasons there, but he never had any like elite game breaking forwards when it came to offense. So it'd be interesting to see what he could do with a team that has guys like Stutzla to work with. But other than that, I know a lot of people like Patrick Waugh. I mean, he's done a lot of good in junior. I'm not sure how it'll translate come back to the NHL, but he's of course a potential candidate out there. But yeah, I miss. Let's see. Um, Broussard needs. Oh, just missed that one. Broussard needs to be on the coach staff too. I could see Broussard coming in as like kind of like what the Sens did with Sean Donovan and Jesse Winchester coming in as like a strength and conditioning coach, just because of his relationship with the team and everything. But as a coach, I don't know. We'll have to see. Otherwise, we're gonna end up like the Habs, where they have Martin St. Louis, Vincent Lecavalier, Alexander Burrows. Like, you're bringing the old boys club back together. Cringe at Prime documentary coming out about Dag. We had left the least jokes now on our Sigor's draft choice. See, it's really interesting though, because like he's not even the worst like high end draft bust in NHL history. Like, look at Nail Yakupov. Like, dude, absolute bust. Uri Slavkovsky still has a lot of runway ahead of him, but he hasn't been looking like a first overall pick as well. I think there's definitely other players you can point to who like Dag had a long career, and he had like I think like a 50 plus point season I think with the Wild, so he wasn't a complete bust. But anyway, it is what it is. It's like ancient history now for the Sens. So I feel like they're gonna go after the Lightning AGM. Forgot his name. Someone else had here. Yeah, Matthew Darsh. Yeah, Darsh's name was brought up. I know Eric Tulsky from the Carolina Hurricanes. His name was brought up as another option. Sure. Like, I'm not opposed as long as they have a good track record. I'm fine with that. Bringing in Yashu will probably get a worse reaction than yeah. I mean, definitely. But I don't know. No comments on that. What, co-host Bennett in the chat? Oh my gosh, for some long time. Where do you see a team being 3 to 5 years, competitive or rebuilding? Oh my god, why'd you ask me something like that? But Bennett, I'm an optimist. I'm gonna say that they're finally gonna be competitive. I think the problem was when you look at some of the past years of the Ottawa Senators, um, with different ownership at the helm, they didn't spend a lot of money into a lot of resources. And I think you look at the new ownership they have. You look at Anlauer bringing new medical staff in, right away going back, bringing in new executives who had good relationships with the community and did good work for the team. Hiring an analytics guy, said the Sens actually have an analytics department. Spending money on upgrading parts of the stadium. He obviously has money that he wants to invest in this team that the previous owner was not. So I think that if this team is somehow rebuilding again in 3 to 5 years, something has completely derailed. And I don't know what that is, but I think if that happens, you're going to see some guys who are big names in this market get shipped out. And I'm not talking like Stützle Sanderson type deal, but I think you could potentially see some other guys either walk away or get shipped out. We'll have enough former players on our coach manager staff to ice a whole alumni team. Yeah, basically, once you get Spezza and you already have Phillips, Neal, and Alfie, go out and I mean Donovan and Winchester part of the org. God, who else? Ben Sexton's on their on in their team as well, so I think he's Belleville alumni though. He's not quite Ottawa Senators alumni, but yeah, you could really dress a whole roster here. When's Craig Anderson coming back? I know he retired as Sen, but we need Dandy Andy coming in maybe as goalie coach. I'd love to see that. They have most of the pieces they need to complete, just need structure and discipline. Yeah, I think that's it. And I think it's accountability, right? Like I think and this became an issue with Guy Boucher as well, right? If a coach stops bringing accountability to players, or like today. Okay, today's a good example. When the news came out prior to DJ Smith being fired that they were having a fun practice or what have you, and they were trying to let loose and just have some fun. Like part of me understands that. You know, what if DJ Smith tried being a hard ass and that didn't work? And so the team doesn't respond. So he's like, let's try a new approach. Let's try and do something fun, lighthearted, loosen up, whatever. To me, it's not the time. The pressure is on the team. The team knows it. They know that the fans expect better of them. They know that the ownership expects better of them, even if they're not saying it publicly. They know that management, same thing, even if not saying publicly, expects better of them. And they know they expect better of themselves, being that these guys now are not, rookies, sophomores for the most part. I know Jake Sanderson obviously is, but for the most part, these guys have been in the league now for a handful of years. They need to start getting results. That's just bottom line. And so, better structure, I think, will definitely help, especially when it comes to their play in the defensive end. I think that is just, you can't stress that enough. But also, their special teams need to improve. Their special teams haven't been good enough this year. They need to be better. I had Mark Mathot and Craig Anderson. I mean, Mark Mathot's probably making a good, pretty penny on that TSN panel. But yeah, I mean, maybe Mark Mathot can teach him the art of the good old hip check. Oh God, I'm not. Peter Sidorkowitz. I That's probably before my time. Sylvain Tertiary. Okay, you guys are just screwing with me now. Oh my God, we're getting derailed here. But yeah, I'm gonna run out of voice. I was talking on the podcast for an hour before this. Now talking on here for an hour. I'm running out of lung capacity. Bring in Andre, bring in Andre Roy as the comedic relief coach. Oh man. All right. Shutting you down, Alfie Smollett. You too, David. No more of this bullshit. Oh man. But yeah, I'm trying to think what else I can say. Um, I think really the team needs stability. Um, that's really it. And like I know they were stressing stability as like DJ Smith, like keeping the same coaching staff. That wasn't working. It just wasn't working. So at the end of the day, like I showed this right at the beginning, so I don't think many people were in the stream yet. But you look at DJ's 5 seasons in the league. Um, the Sens have never finished better than sixth in their division. And yes, I know they were rebuilding for like most of his first few seasons with the team, but at some point you got to turn this thing around. Like the Sens had a better winning percentage last season than this season, and think about how many injuries and goaltenders Ottawa went through last year. Like, does that not scream problematic to anyone in here? Bennett pops in. Cole Julian J. Woodcroft. Yeah, fuck Mary Kill. Oh my god, dude. On stream like this. Um, Dude, what the hell? I'm gonna get charged by the RCMP. I'm not answering this. This information, this question. We're getting out of here, Bennett. I'm cutting you from the podcast. You're off. Oh man. But yeah, anyway, sorry, going back to the coaching record. God, I didn't even realize the Sens were 11 and 15. I after it was like 11 and 13, I just tuned it out. I was just hoping for the best. Hoping for the best, expecting the worst. But then, as we see here, Jacques Martin. So started his career with St. Louis, big 8-year gap, comes into Ottawa. Obviously, that first season was, for lack of a better word, just an absolute gong show. Um, and then, 96, 97, they end up making the playoffs. They lose in 7 games, but they actually turned it around and made the playoffs. And he continued to make the playoffs with the Sens, even in the year where he was fired. Like after that year, they made the playoffs. They lost, but they made the playoffs. We won't talk about who they lost to, by the way. You bring that up, you're dead to me. Coward. Oh man. We need to finish out the season at minimum with this core from 2024 season off season off onward. If they continue to struggle, a non-untouchable player could be on the move. Yeah, and I think there's some kind of more obvious candidates for this. Uh, One, I think, you look at a guy. Um, I think like it's hard. I don't want to name names because then, oh man, but it's possible that you see a guy like potentially Thomas Shabbat or Drake Batherson or Josh Norris or someone like that, and they start to sniff around and see, can we get a player or like another player to come in and play that role for cheaper? Can we get draft picks and then flip those for another guy who might offer something different? Like hypothetically, let's say they want to move away from a skill guy like Drake Batherson and instead go towards, a power forward style player. Um, Maybe that's something that they look to do. I mean, we'll see. I don't want that to happen. I want this team to figure things out themselves and get going. But yeah, it's possible. I think it truly depends on performance. Which players seem to be bringing it, and which players aren't buying into either the system, team play, just aren't figuring it out on the defensive side of the puck. Excuse me. I think one of those guys. We'll have to see. We were 100% with Alabama on the bench. Maybe we never lose again. There we go. That's the rational take I wanted. Um, yeah. I mean, who knows? I think the Sens are in a good spot when it comes to, I mean, okay, talent on the roster, they're in a good spot. I think this move should have happened earlier than it did. Now, Staios' reasoning behind it was after that Panthers game where Ottawa got blown out 5-0. DJ Smith made adjustments to their defensive system and the details of their game, or something like that, is what Staios was saying. And so he said following that, the team seemed to get their act together. And he said for the next 5 games, they won 3 of them. And Staios liked what he saw in, I think he said like 4 of those 5 games. And so he's like, okay, I think this can get back on the rails. And then they went on this road trip and things fell apart. And even before the road trip, it started to fall apart. But on this road trip, it fell apart. And I think that's when Steos realized that he needed to make a change. And that's when he decided to do it. Um, there were some questions asked during the media presser about why he decided to fire DJ at or after practice and not just fire him before so that he's not coaching or sorry practicing with a team that he's about to be fired from. It's a little weird, but I guess Steos's reasoning was that they needed to sort some stuff out with the coaching and this, that, other thing. And I don't know. I was like, sure, I guess. A little peculiar, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Um, I thought they would honestly fire him when he got back from the road trip, but I think this kind of allows the team to not have the pressure of the fan base immediately, like the first game back with like a new coach and everything at home. This allows them to stay on the road, kind of build their stuff out there without the fan pressure of their home arena, and then they come back against the Penguins on Saturday night and see what they can do in front of a home crowd. If this team can live up to Jacques' attention to detail and Alvy's compete level every night, they can win a lot of games. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's just how can they adapt? How motivated are they to adapt so that they can succeed? This is obviously everyone knows not just a tough league, a real tough division, and they need to come ready to play every night. They've lost games to teams like Buffalo, Detroit. I know they've beaten Detroit twice this season, but they've lost to Detroit, lost to Buffalo, um, lost to the Leafs, and that game against the Leafs was definitely winnable. Ottawa outplayed the Leafs. They just couldn't secure the victory. You need to win against your rivals, to put it bluntly. They need to. And then, again, another example, they lost to Tampa Bay when Tampa was without Vasilevsky. These are the games that you need to find a way to win, especially in a tough division. And teams like Boston, who people have counted out the last 2 seasons, have come out and showed that they're not going away yet. And they don't have the same talent that Ottawa does. But they have good coaching. I can tell you that much, and good defensive structure. And those two things go a long way. And so hopefully the Sens get that with Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredson. I hope they figure it out and they find out who wants to be a bus driver and who are the bus riders. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think that's really what's going to happen, right? At the end of the day, are you going to have players who are going to just coast? Are you have players who are going to kind of not throw in the towel, but kind of decide, I might not be here next season anyway, so who cares? And I hope that they're held accountable. I don't think a guy like Tarasenko will start coasting per se, but I just hope that a guy, you know, of potentially like a pending UFA or what have you, doesn't decide to just kind of call it a season and already mentally check themselves out, because that's the worst thing that a player could do, especially for a team like this who is starving to take that next step. But I don't think they've shown it on the ice. They say it sometimes, and Kachuk will call out fans or voice his displeasure at like a fired EJ chant or what have you. And it's good to see that passion, but you need to direct it not at the fans, because the fans are the ones who are showing up to all these games wanting and hoping that their team is going to make that step and become a playoff team. Season ticket sales have jumped up crazy numbers over the past 2 years, So the fan support is there. But the team can't turn around and blame the fans. They need to put the responsibility on themselves, and they need to figure out the answers as to how they can succeed. And if they're not buying into a system led by respectable guys like Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredson, then I don't think they're going to be playing on the Ottawa Senators for very long. Yeah, if the buy-in's there, exactly, and that's it. They just have to have that buy-in, and yeah, we gotta wait and see if they get that or not. And I truly hope they do. Like, I know I've been saying this a lot, but Jacques Martin is well respected. Daniel Alfredson is well respected. If you're not gonna take the advice or buy into the systems that these guys try to implement, what the hell are you doing? Like, at that point, it's like, do you want to be a player in the NHL who would do anything to make sure his team wins? So it's an interesting thing to discuss. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think we were talking about earlier about the 20 to 30 games to see who's kind of a pretender and who's the real deal when it comes to how they can play under a new system. Um, I was actually shocked. I was at work today. I was actually talking with my supervisor about the Sens coaching situation, and got a notification on my phone that DJ had been fired, and I was like, "Well, isn't this topical?" So yeah, pretty funny how things turned out, coincidences and all. If they lost all the games on this trip, kept DJ and got crushed by Pittsburgh, there would have been jerseys on the ice. Yeah, and listen, I never want to see jerseys on the ice. That stuff's bush league. Um, if ever you get the urge to throw your jersey on the ice, please go to your nearest, whether it's a Value Village or other donation site, and please donate your jersey so that some kid or whatever can get a jersey. Please do not throw it on the ice. That's just bush league crap. Hate that stuff. But yeah, I think if they lost all the, I mean, I think it's actually a merciful way to fire him. I think if you had waited until after December 23rd, first of all, it's basically right on Christmas. And my hunch is, like, I don't know. I'm firing a guy at that time of year, whether they celebrate Christmas or whether they celebrate another holiday festival. Seems pretty harsh. But also, I imagine he would get relentlessly booed by the fan base at home on the 23rd, and that would just be awful. So I think that it's just, yeah, I don't think they could have done that. I think it had to happen on the road trip. I'm surprised it did. I thought they might wait until before the game on Saturday. I thought maybe they would fire him at the end of the road trip, but before the first home game back. But I guess after that 6-3 loss, they'd seen enough, and that was all she wrote. But anyway, it has been an hour already. Thank you everyone who's chimed in chat. Thanks to all the viewers that we've had on the live stream tonight. Really appreciate it. Like I said, new podcast episode is coming out tomorrow. That's going to be all about myself, other Matt and Bennett, all talking about DJ Smith being fired, our opinions on Jacques Martin coming in, Daniel Alfredson, what's going on with Jack Capuano, and his choice when he gets a say in whether he moves on or not. That's interesting. And we talk a little bit about the discussion that's been taking place on social media about goaltending, because I know that's been a pretty prominent one. So you can catch that tomorrow on our channel, or on Spotify or whatever, wherever you listen to your stuff. So anyway, yeah, thank you for everyone for watching, commenting, all that stuff. Really appreciate it. Go Sens, go, baby. Jacques Martin, Daniel Offison, take us to the promised land. Good night, everybody.